Well, it's pretty accurate in terms of what they said and what they felt, and it was an era of letter writing, copious letter writing, and so and of course these people were very obsessive about the details of conversations and who said what and the meaning of subtle things. So we have very accurate idea of what they actually said to each other and how they interacted with each other. And for me, being neutral, and I've said it's a process of resurrection. I want to bring them back to life as accurately as possible. That means I don't have an agenda. I'm not trying to say, good Freud, bad Jung, or vice versa. Just say, well, it's a fantastic story. This kind of intellectual ménage à trois, and let's see what really went on. And in doing that, we will understand something about the birth of psychoanalysis, how difficult it was, how dangerous it was considered to be, and so on and so on. Excuse me for a second. This is just water.
Yeah. Ooh, mine's Mega C.
I see that.
Fruit,
I
yes.
see that. It's intimidating. So, but I mean, you can see video of interviews with Jung when he was about 80.
Yeah, he died in
1961,
yeah,
I think.
Yeah.
And you'll see that he's warm and charming and sweet and very grandfatherly. But when he was 29, when we meet him in the movie, he was a proper Swiss German who was very ambitious and trying to forge a career for himself as a psychiatrist and partly running the Bergholzli Clinic, huge, massive clinic in Zurich, and was considered to be, very charismatic, very charming, but very forceful, and so on. We're also seeing him very specifically. I mean, you can see that there is warmth and sweetness there as well, but also he thinks a lot of himself, and our understanding of what Freud was, as opposed to sort of once again the 80-year-old Freud that we all know, who's sort of cancer-ridden, emaciated, grandfatherly.
Still with a cigar.
Always with a cigar. He smoked 22 of them a day, and that's on record. Absolutely, 22 every day of his life. He was, though, described by Stefan Zweig in The World of Yesterday, the Austrian writer who wrote in great detail about that era, as being handsome, masculine, charming, seductive, charismatic, funny, witty. This is Freud. And that's not the Freud we think we know, but it is the Freud who existed. And when you think of it, he had to be that kind of charismatic leader to forge this group, this alliance of disparate characters to create the psychoanalytic movement. And so that is, when you read Freud as well, his letters, he can be very funny and very cutting as well when he's angry, very witty in a nasty way. And so all of these things we sort of, for both actors, this was the sort of a grist for our mill,
Right. Well, I think that the movie has a lot more humor in it than you might associate with a story like this.
Yes, that's right.
And there's a couple of things that struck me, and I've since learned that this is historically accurate, but Freud's chair, to me, looks like an erect penis.
Yeah, well,
is that, I mean, am I reading that into that? Or
I
no?
think you need therapy.
I might,
No, when you see it, it actually it looks human because it does have a head, and so you could say that's a penis.
Yeah.
But it also looks like a person, just like that,
right.
with the arms out. It actually looks like it's a sort of a Gumby kind of human,
Right.
And Freud did have that chair designed for himself. It's a unique design. I've never seen anything like it. A well-known architect of the time designed and built it for him. I have a replica of it at home.
Really?
Yeah. Well, we had to build a replica of it for the movie, so I've got that. And because the original is in the Freud Museum in Hampstead in London. Right. But it's actually a very functional chair. It actually has lumbar support, which is unusual for the era, and it's actually quite comfortable. You can really get down in that chair, which Freud did, and even to the point of Freud's position in the chair at times, with his legs swung over the arm, which seems kind of informal
for that time.
For that time,
right?
In fact, there were descriptions of Freud sitting in the chair like that by one of his nieces, I think. So it was even that was accurate. When we discovered that, it was very exciting. I said to Vigo, we got to find a moment in the movie where you can do that, when you can show that Freud is, very relaxed, and we found exactly the right moment in the movie to have him sit in the chair that very informal way, playful, really.
Yeah, well, see, that's what I was taken with this performance. It struck me, I've in London. I've stayed in Freud's old house. It's a hotel now, and there's postcards of him, and he's a hunched old man with cigars, and that's the image I have of him. And Viggo was so playful in this, and I just felt that I loved I loved listening to this movie. I loved listening to the dialogue. I loved the simplicity of the movie itself because it drove me to the dialogue. Yes, it made me listen.
Yeah.
And sort of process more. And Viggo's performance to me is the performance that's different. It doesn't stick out like a sore thumb, but it's different because it's got a lot more warmth than I would have associated with a Victorian doctor at the time. The feet, as you say, over the arms of the.
Yes.
And it to me is a wonderful take on a character that I thought that I had a grip on and clearly don't.
Yeah, well, that's it. I mean, that was, casting Viggo, for example, in itself is not what you would expect. Right. Viggo Mortensen as Sigmund Freud is not an obvious casting choice. Yeah. But we felt that we were delivering the real Freud, and in truth, he was unusual in his era. Yes, I mean, you could say, no, he wasn't an average guy, obviously. What he was saying was very revolutionary. How he was attacked on many fronts. I mean, it's interesting that you see it that way because some people have described him as pompous in the movie and sort of arrogant. So you see, even that is interesting because I agree with you. I mean, that's what we felt we were delivering when somebody literally says he's a pompous ass in the movie. This was, I think, a British critic. I say, well, I don't see that. I mean, obviously, he is leading a movement. He does feel he's a man of importance, and certainly he was ambitious. They were all ambitious. Yes, so there is all of that. So it depends on what aspect of the performance you focus on, I guess, as to what you take away from it.
Yeah. No, I was just taken in. It's essentially a three-hander. It's like, for me, I almost felt like I was watching this live on stage somehow. It felt that way because I think of the simplicity of the camera. There's not, at least in my memory anyway, there's not crane shots.
There are crane shots. Are there? Well, there's the boat scene. That's a crane shot on a boat. That wasn't. Right. I want credit for that. And actually, the sailboat stuff is also very difficult to do. All of that stuff, being on a sailboat on a lake with a camera is. Boats are worse even than cars. Right. So it does flow more maybe than you think. But on the other hand, though, I will say that as I've always said, you give the movie what it wants. You give it what it demands. And I've never been afraid to just let the camera stay on a face, because people say, "Oh, that's not cinematic." But I say, no. I mean, the thing that you photograph most as a filmmaker is the human face. So I'm not. You have a fantastic face saying fantastic things.
You got 3 fantastic faces in this.
Well, 5 actually. Don't forget Otto Gross and don't forget Emma Young. It's really a 5-hander in that way. Right. But then you don't need to sort of get. I mean, what drives me crazy these days is this jiggly handheld camera stuff and moving around while people are sitting at a table, and it's just it's so annoying. I mean, it's like the director saying, "Don't forget me. I'm here. I'm here."
I find that takes me out of the story, which is
I do too.
And I apologize for the sailboat scenes. I can picture them in my head now, but my memory of this movie, is of static shots and faces and long shots,
Yes,
and
that takes a lot. Yeah,
of him, of Young sitting behind Keira Knightley, and her with.
Well, those were very long takes.
Yeah, and how it really felt to me like I wasn't distracted by the filmmaking, and I know that's a choice.
Yes,
I understand that's a choice, and I understand.
Yeah, because you could if you psyched yourself out as a filmmaker and saying, okay, well. people will. It's based on a play. Of course, what they don't know is that the play is based on a screenplay, or an earlier screen. So it really is not based on a play, actually. But people, you wonder, why do people think that dense, intense, complex dialogue is innately theatrical? Why is it? It's not really. I mean, it could be, you can get very sparse, Pinteresque dialogue as well, and that's theatrical too. So where does that come from? So if you psych yourself out, though, I got to really create some movement or motion, because people will get bored, or they won't want to just see one shot of somebody talking. I just didn't worry about that. I mean, it's not that I planned it in advance, but as soon as I started to be on the set with the actors, it became apparent what I had to do and what felt right to do. And sure, it's like chamber music in a way. There's no question about that.
I was hoping the other night that you weren't home in Toronto flicking around the stations, because Eastern Promises was on. And of course, I stopped. I love that movie. I stopped to watch it. And the edited for television version made me slap my forehead. Yeah, the scene in the steam bath starts with the guys, you see the knife come out, and then the next shot is Viggo on a stretcher.
Oh, that's terrible. But I mean, that's free TV, obviously. You never watched those. Well, really? Bravo did that?
Yeah, and it was on late. That's why I thought, and I love that movie, and I was interviewing Viggo in the next few days, and I thought, it'll take my mind off the film festival. It doesn't feel like work to me watching this movie.
Yeah, well, that's terrible, but that's, I mean, there's nothing you can do about it. I mean, it's Kubrick tried to control all those things, and I think it just drove him nuts. And he wasn't successful anyway.
That's what DVD's for.
Yeah, exactly.
The reaction of audiences has been good.
It has been very good.
It's been very good. And were you surprised by the reaction to audiences? I mean, these are characters, again, that a great many people don't have a lot of. They know the names, but they might not know that much about. So, is it a historical drama, or is it just a fascinating story about three people?
No, I think it's sort of a love story. I mean, it really is a triangle, but it has so much other stuff going on. I don't even feel myself the need to characterize it, because to me that's a sort of a marketing problem. Right. It's not really a creative problem for me to make the movie. I think the advertising of the three faces and the sort of triangle thing, that's accurate enough. Yeah. It gets you into it, but you never know what to expect with an audience ultimately. And until we went to Venice, I had not ever seen it with a big audience that wasn't somehow connected to the movie. So you never know what's going to happen. And especially in Toronto, they really got all the subtleties of not just the humor, but other things. Mm-hmm. And it's a very emotional movie, really. I mean, in a way, yes, Jung is very self-possessed and kind of clinical and a little distanced, and suddenly at the end of the movie, you realize that he's been emotionally devastated, and it's. I love that aspect of it and of Michael's performance, and I think it works. I mean, people really feel that emotion at the end. So I was happy to see that all of that worked. I felt it, but you never know if other people are going to feel it as well through their own filters, their own personal filters.
Absolutely. Yeah. David, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.